Guys, here we are with another Magic the Gathering video. This one's going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be mixing two of my uh, favorite hobbies, and that is one, Magic the Gathering, and two, Ark Survival Evolved. This deck was built to elicit the same sort of experience, like my personal experience with Ark Survival Evolved, not Survival Ascended, although I do play Survival Ascended now. Ark Survival Evolved is what this deck was created, was the inspiration for this deck. My personal journey through Ark Survival Evolved. So I'm just going to talk about that aspect of it as I go through it. We're going to be using Huatli, Poet of Unity, as the commander. She has, when she enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And you can also pay 3 generic mana and 2 red or white, like hybrid mana, to exile Huatli and then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control. And then the saga that she transforms into is the first stage is to create 2/3/3 dinosaur creature tokens, green dinosaur creature tokens. The second stage is Roar of the Fifth People gains creatures you control have tap to add a red, green, or white to your mana pool. And third stage would be search your library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, and then shuffle. And the fourth stage and the final stage is dinosaurs you control gain double strike and trample until end of turn. So it's you can tell that it's a very dinosaur heavy deck. It's based on Ark Survival Evolved, and if you know Ark Survival Evolved, it's dinosaur heavy. So, yeah, I'm just going to get into it here. We got the dinosaurs. Let's start with that. The most exciting part first. We'll just do the dinosaurs. So, we've got Apex Altasaur to start with. This is just like the Brontosauruses in Ark Survival Evolved. It has when it enters the battlefield, it fights a target creature you don't control, and then whenever it's dealt damage, it can fight a target creature. It's a 10/10 for 9, so it's a pretty expensive creature to put out on the field, but it's in green, so it's not actually that expensive for green. But it's a big 10/10 creature, so it's just going to be fighting all over the place. Next, we have Arboreal Grazer. This just kind of really fits with the. It's kind of like reminds me of the monkey pet that you can have on your shoulder a little bit. And it also kind of keeps the deck a little bit more viable when you're playing it. It's just a 1 green 0/3 creature, and it has reach, which is important for some decks because you're going to be fighting some flyers. And then it has whenever this creature enters, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. So it just is land ramp in a creature form, and it's a 1/1 creature. It's a 0/3 creature for 1 with reach, so it's all right. It's an all right solid card. I like putting it in most of my green decks. Next, we have Bellowing Aegisaur. Sorry. This is like the Ankylosaurus. It has Enrage, so whenever it's dealt damage, you can put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Pretty good. It's a 3/5 for 6. 5 generic and 1 white mana. So that's a pretty solid creature. It's a bit on the expensive side for mana cost, but it also can put 1/1 counters on each creature you control. So it's a fair assessment of the card, I think. Next, we have Cacophodon. This one elicits it was put in inspired by the Pachyrhinosaurus or Pachyrhinosaurus, however you pronounce it. I think I always say Pachyrhinosaurus, but it could be Pachyrhinosaurus. I have no idea. But that's why this card is in there. It has Enrage. A lot of these cards are going to have the Enrage ability. It's a 3 generic and 1 green mana for a 2/5, and whenever it's dealt damage, whenever Cacophodon is dealt damage, untap target permanent. So it's just untap. Whenever it's dealt damage, it untaps a permanent. So it's pretty solid. Next, we have Canyon Jerboa. This is for the Scorched Earth expansion. Jerboa. Obviously, I mean, some of the people on the design team must have played Ark Survival Evolved, because there is a bunch of cards that came out around that time, around the time that I was playing, that they do are reminiscent a lot of some Ark creatures, and they could have been inspired by in the same way that I was, possibly. That's my opinion, not fact. Whenever it has landfall, whenever a land control enters, creatures under your control get +1/+1 until end of turn. And then it's a 1/2 creature, and it's 2 generic and 1 white. So it's just, a Jerboa. It was my favorite shoulder pet in Ark Survival Evolved. It's got to be in there. And then we have Cherished Hatchling. This is just, you're going to be raising a lot of baby dinos. So it's a 2-drop green dinosaur creature. It's a 2/1, and when it dies, you may cast dinosaur spells as though they had flash. And whenever you cast a dinosaur spell this turn, it gains when this creature enters the battlefield, you may have it fight another target creature. It's a pretty good flavor for what we do in Ark Survival Evolved. It's, raising dinos. It's the name of the game, kind of. So that's why I have that one in there. We have Italy Primal Storm. This one is reminiscent of the Spinosaurus, obviously. Got to get it in there. Yeah, it's a 6-drop, and Italy, everybody knows Italy. Pretty much, it's a pretty popular, well-known card. Whenever it attacks, you exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana costs. It's a 6/6 for 6, and then has that ability. It's pretty solid. Then we have Felidar Retreat. This is an enchantment, has landfall, and you can choose one. You can either create a 2/2 white cat beast creature token, and you can put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. This the Felidars are reminiscent to me, kind of, sort of, in a far-reaching kind of way, of the Thylacos in the Redwood Forest area. The Thylacos are what I consider to be closest to the Felidars. You could also say the Sabertooth, but I think the Thylacos are closer, in my opinion, and that's why this one is in there. And then we have Flump. I know this is a bit of a stretch. This is a bit of a far stretch, but it's the only jellyfish I could find in these colors at the time of creating the deck. It was the only jellyfish creature I could find in red, green, or white. So I had to put it in there because there's the jellyfish in Ark that you kill to get biotoxin. And the biotoxin is used for a lot of things. So I had to find a jellyfish to put it in, and Flump was the result. It's the only jellyfish that I could find. So it's there. I know that it's Dungeons and Dragons, and it's not really a water jellyfish. It's kind of just like an air jellyfish, but I had to stretch this one a little bit. Okay, so don't. I know. And then we have the unicorn. We have a Good Fortune unicorn here. That's from Ragnarok. You can find a single unicorn on the Ragnarok map. There is a single spawn for a unicorn that you can possibly find. Yeah, you can find one, and it's pretty solid. So Good Fortune Unicorn is one of the better unicorns that I could find for this deck, because it is going to be putting +1/+1 counters on creatures that enter, so it's useful. And it fills that itch of having a unicorn in the deck to link to the it be inspired from the Ark version of the unicorn. We have Harnessed Snubhorn. I really like the art on this card. This is a great. I think this is also a Pachyrhinosaurus, actually. It looks kind of like. I think this is also a Pachyrhinosaurus, actually. So this is pretty solid. As whenever Harnessed Snubhorn deals combat damage to a player, return target artifact or enchantment from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that's pretty solid. It's a 2/5 for 4, and it's a white creature, dinosaur. So that's pretty cool. It also has Vigilance, so that's also a nice perk that it has. And then we have Hornet Nest. This is reminiscent of the beehive in Ark, where Had a quite the adventure trying to tame a queen bee so that we could have some beehives and tame the dire bear and use honey for like all of the recipes that use honey. We needed honey, and also the to tame a snail, you needed a cake that used honey as one of the ingredients, I believe, if I remember correctly. So the hornet nest, and it kind of, the mechanics kind of work the same way. Whenever it's dealt damage, create that many. Although in Ark, it's whenever you get close to it, it just starts shooting out bees like crazy. And then we got Kazandu Mammoth. This is obviously inspired by the mammoths of Ark. Survival Evolved. It can also come into a play as a land, so that's pretty useful. And it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And it's a 1 generic and 2 green mana to cast, and it's a 3/3. So yeah, it's pretty solid for a creature, and it fills the mammoth slot of Ark Survival Evolved. So that's pretty solid. And then we've got the Magma Phoenix card. This is really cool. It fills the Phoenix version, creature that you can tame in Ark Survival Evolved in the Scorched Earth expansion. There is a Phoenix in that area that you can tame when you find it. And it also, for deck building purposes, when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each player, which means that it will trigger all of the enrage and damage to your own creature effects when it dies or is put into the graveyard. And it can come back from your graveyard to your hand, and you can keep casting it over and over again. So that's pretty cool. As long as you have the mana to do so. It's pretty expensive for mana, though. 5. It's like 3 generic and 2 red, and then also 3 generic and 2 red to return to your hand from the graveyard. So it's a bit of a steep cost, but it does have the effect that will like synergize with the rest of the deck. So it's a pretty solid include, in my opinion. Next, we have Marauding Raptor. Obviously, the raptor herds of raptor packs of Ark Survival Evolved. You get mowed down by raptors all the time until you finally get a raptor of your own. So it has creature spells you cast cost 1 less, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Marauding Raptor deals 2 damage to it. If a dinosaur is dealt damage this way, Marauding Raptor gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So this one's really solid to include because it does the damage that we need to trigger enrage abilities, and also gives itself a buff when it does so, and it reduces the cost of other dinosaurs and creatures that you cast. So pretty like mandatory. Next, we have Nesting Dragon. So this is great because of the wyverns. I know that the dragons in Ark aren't really dragons, they're wyverns, but this card fills out the flavor really well because I know that it's not technically a wyvern, but whenever a land that you control enters, you create a 0/2 red dragon creature egg creature token with Defender, and when this creature dies, you create a 2/2 red dragon creature token with flying, and it has fire breathing, which is pay 1 red, gets +1. This token gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Wyvern egg hunting, like this is peak right here. This is mandatory include. Next, we have Polyraptor. This one is just another raptor. It is an 8-cost 5/5 creature, but it has an enrage ability. Whenever it's dealt damage, create a token that's a copy of Polyraptor. Now, there is a known combo with the Marauding Raptor that if you have Marauding Raptor out and then you cast Polyraptor, it will do the damage to that original Polyraptor, and then a new Polyraptor token will come into the battlefield, and it will deal the damage to that, and it will continue to create Polyraptor tokens until something stops it. So you can accidentally draw the game by just creating an infinite amount of Polyraptor tokens. Hopefully You just create like a few dozen, and you should win the game with that if you get to that point. Next, we have Raging Regisaur. This is obviously a T-Rex inspired. I put it in because there's T-Rexes in Ark, so it had to be included, of course. It's a 4. It's a 4 mana 4/4, and whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to any target. So you can deal damage to anything with this guy. If you attack with him, you can deal damage to your own creatures and trigger the enrage abilities. You can deal ping your opponent for 1 every time, or deal 1 damage to their like 1/1 tokens or whatever you need it for. It's there. And then we have Raging Swordtooth, which is another. To me, it's another T-Rex inspired include here. Inspired by the Uranus even, because it's even furrier than the previous one. They're both pretty furry or feathery maybe, but this one, yeah, it could be the Uranus as well. Look, it's pretty. It's got quite a lot of like fur, feathery, yeah. And then, yeah, it has trample, and whenever it enters the battlefield, it deals. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each other creature. So if you have a bunch of other creatures with enrage on the battlefield already, you just put this guy out, and it deals 1 damage to each of them, and then you get 1 trigger to each of those effects, which is pretty cool when it happens. Next, we have Raging Raptors. Talking about rage effects, this is another one that's pretty cool. It's just a pack of raptors. Like, obviously, I had to include this one. It's a 3-drop 2/3 creature, dinosaur creature, and it has enrage. Whenever Raging Raptors is dealt damage, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So it's just mana ramp in a creature form that's really cool. And it has the enrage ability. Every time it's dealt damage, you can just search for land and put it out. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty solid card. Next, we have the Griffin. Obviously, I had to create a Griffin, include a Griffin in the deck. This one's a really cool Griffin. Retaliator Griffin, it's called. It's a 4-drop 2/2, but it has flying, and whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on Retaliator Griffin. So whenever you're taking damage from anything, you can just put that many +1/+1 counters on the Griffin, and he can grow pretty fast and pretty big pretty quickly under the right circumstances, facing the right opponents. But even without that, you can still deal damage to yourself with this deck with other cards that are in it, if you wanted to like increase his counters, +1/+1 counters. So it's pretty solid. Next, we have Ripjaw Raptor here. Whenever it's dealt damage, you can draw a card. It's a 4-drop 4/5 dinosaur creature. Obviously, it's a raptor. Obviously, I had to include as many raptors as I could in this deck because there's raptors all over the place in Ark Survival Evolved, at least the island part. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory, just card draw and it's raptors, so it's pretty cool. Next, we have the Runic Armasaur, which is reminiscent of the Stegosaurus in Ark. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or land that isn't a mana ability, you may draw a card. So this is more card draw, depending on your opponent's creature and land abilities. So yeah, no, it's cool enough to put in there. And I needed something for the Stegosaurus, so there it is. We have the Rust Scarab. This is a 5-drop 4/5, and whenever it becomes blocked, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. So this is a pretty cool effect, and it is reminiscent of the dung beetles in Ark Survival Evolved. So yeah, it looked close enough to their dung beetle that I was like, yes, I need to include this in here. And that's why I put it in there. Next, we have Sandworm Convergence. This is an enchantment. It's not a creature, but it does have the sandworms in there, much like the death worms in Ark Survival Evolved. This is a really cool enchantment. It's an 8-drop enchantment. Creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. So this is gonna, and that's why I included it in here. It's just really solid. It's great. It fits the aesthetic, everything. It's pretty cool. And then we have Scourge of Care Ridges. This is kind of, I know it's another dragon. It should be a wyvern, but I'm including dragons because there is the boss dragon. This would be reminiscent of the boss dragon, I suppose. And it also has the effect that I'm looking for, an effect that also helps the deck. So it's an 8-drop 6/6, and it has flying, and then you can pay 2 mana, 1 generic, 1 red, and Scourge of Care Ridges deals 2 damage to each creature without flying. That works perfect for most of the dragons, or most of the dinosaurs, sorry, in the deck. It will deal the damage to them, trigger the enrage effects, and then you get each of the effects of the enraged creatures that are on the field. And you can also pay 6 if you want to do more of a board wipe type thing. You can pay 5 generic and 1 red, and Scourge of Care Ridges will deal 6 damage to each other creature with flying. If you want to just clear this, clear the skies, so to speak. Then we got Silverclad Ferocidons. This is like more raptors. It's a 7-drop 8/5, and whenever Silverclad Ferocidons is dealt damage, each opponent sacrifices a permanent. So this can be really useful. This is just a really solid raptor card. I had to include it. It helps with removal. It's another source of removal to help get rid of your opponents, like artifacts, enchantments, or even land. I guess it's any permanent. It can get rid of any permanent, but your opponents will have to sacrifice. So you have to just do a lot of one damages to this, and then you can get your opponents starting to sacrifice permanents. All right, next we have this is a bit of a contentious card for me. The Soaring Sandwing. This is the reminiscent of the Tabajaras. I don't know the correct pronunciation for Tapajara. I think it's Tapayaro or something, but I call it Tapajara. That's my name for it. And when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. It also has plane cycling, so you can pay 2, discard this card, and search your library for a planes card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. It's a 6-drop 3/5. I included this card because there are some downsides to Arc, and for me, whenever I tried to tame a Tapajara, something always happened that would prevent me from taming it, or I would tame it and it would immediately die, or whenever I had one and I would take it out to do something, that whatever adventure I took it on to go and do, it would fail. I would fail so many times with taming this dinosaur, or on the adventure after I had tamed 1 or 2, or it would die immediately after I tamed it. Like this was my bad luck charm in Arc, was one of these dinosaurs. And it was also, my favorite at one point. It was my favorite dinosaur. I wanted to tame one, and it was also the worst experience to tame one. But that's part of the game. You have to accept the good and the bad parts. Because looking back on the worst parts of Arc, it wasn't even really that bad, It was just part of the experience. There's going to be ups and downs. This is one of the downs. But it was also an enjoyable experience, even if it was one of the down lower parts of the. So you looking back, you gotta accept all of the whole experience. You can't just look at one side or the other. So this one right here, this is my my bad luck experience with Arc. I'll just leave it at that. All right, next we have Subterranean Shambler. Now this is kind of like this. I put this in here to be reminiscent of the rock golem in Ark Survival Evolved. It's not really a golem, but you know it's waking up and it's like rock formed. It's kind of like a golem, but they call it an elemental. That's all right. It's a 4-drop 2/3. It has echo at the beginning. You pay 3 generic and 1 red at the beginning of your upkeep. If this came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, sacrifice it unless you pay its echo cost. It also has this effect here. This is the main reason. Well, the second main reason. The main reason is because you know it's Ark and it's reminiscent of the Ark, the Rock Golem. But this effect also helps with the rest of the deck as well. So it's a kind of like a layered reason to have this in the deck. When Subterranean Shambler comes into play or leaves play, it deals 1 damage to each creature without flying. So it can, when you play it and when it leaves play, so you can also just refuse to play. You can refuse to pay the echo cost, and it'll just be sacrificed, and then it can do this 1 damage again. So it will trigger all of the rage effects that you have on the field. So that's pretty cool. And then we have Temple Altosaur. This is just another inspiration by the Brachiosaurus or Brontosaurus. If a source would deal damage to another dinosaur you control, prevent all but 1 of that damage. So that's just, you know, helps with enrage triggers a little bit. It also reduces damage dealt to your creatures. So that's pretty solid overall. Sorry, it's a 5-drop and it's a 3/4. And then we've got this one over here. We've got Tincali Hunter. This is the Scorpion. Obviously, I put it in there to be reminiscent of the Scorpion in Ark. It has Retrieve Prey, which is an adventure sorcery. Exile target creature card from your graveyard until the end of your next turn. You may cast that card. And it also is a 7/7 creature for 7 mana. It has Trample, and once each turn you may pay 0 rather than the mana cost for a creature spell you cast from exile. You have a creature in your graveyard that you want to cast. You cast Retrieve Prey, so you exile the target creature from your graveyard, and then until the end of your next turn you can cast it. So you can cast it the same turn, or you can wait till next turn if you don't have enough mana or anything. And then you can cast it from exile. You can cast this card first if you wait for next turn, or if you wait until you can cast this creature. You cast this guy, and then you don't have to pay the mana cost when you cast this creature from exile, because you can just use this ability instead. Especially if it's a big creature, it can save you some mana as well. If it's like a 10 cost mana creature or a 9 cost mana creature, you can pay 7 instead, and then just use his ability to cast it from exile after you've exiled it from the graveyard. That's pretty cool. Next we have Triassic Egg. This is an artifact, and it's a pretty terrible card to be honest. But you know it's a 4-cost egg. You put it down, and then you have to pay 3 generic and tap this to put a hatchling counter on Triassic Egg, and then you can remove 2 hatchling counters. So it's going to cost like 10 mana total, and then you remove 2 counters, and you may put a creature card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. So it's just a one-time effect too. You remove 2 from Triassic Egg and sacrifice it, and then you can put a creature on. But it's like 10 mana in total. So it's a very expensive card. It's not very good, but I needed to put it in for flavor and for the overall aesthetic of the deck. That's why it's there. Next we have Trove Warden. So this is sort of like, to me, it's similar to the, well, it could be 2 things really, but mostly the Thylacos, but it also has like the same tail, or like same aesthetic, like its body has the same general aesthetic as the Ravagers from the Aberration expansion in Ark. It has whenever a land, and it has Vigilance first. I guess we'll start here. This is a 4/4 creature, as a 4-drop creature for 3/4. And then it has it has vigilance. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard. When Trove Warden dies, put each permanent card exiled with it onto the battlefield under the control of that card's owner. So you can exile cards from the graveyard, from your graveyard, and then when it dies, you put them all on the field. It can be, even this is really cool because it also includes land cards, which so you can exile land cards from the graveyard, and then they all come onto the battlefield whenever this creature dies. So that's pretty cool. We have Trumpeting Carnosaur. Obviously, I needed to add a Carnosaur, and they just happened to have printed one when I was making this deck. Or, yeah, around the time I was making this deck. So that's I added it in there. It has Trample. I guess it's a 6-cost 7/6 dinosaur creature, and it has Trample. And then when Trumpeting Carnosaur enters the battlefield, discover 5. Discover is sort of like Cascade, but you can choose to put it in your hand instead of the bottom of your library if you don't cast it. And next it has, you can pay 3 and discard Trumpeting Carnosaur. It deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So you can either use it as removal for your opponent's creature or your opponent's planeswalker, or you can also use it as a trigger for Enrage if it's necessary. Like if you have something on the battlefield and you'd like to trigger the Enrage and you have no other way, then this is one way you could do it from your hand. And it costs less than the casting cost, so you can just trigger that. Pretty good include, I think. And then we have Wayward Swordtooth, which is sort of like a raptor again. This is a 3-cost 5/5, and it has Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Wayward Swordtooth can't attack or block unless you have the City's Blessing. So this one, you need like 10 permanents on the field in order for it to be completely utilized, but it still has this playing additional lands on your turn, so it can help with getting to the Ascend trigger, at the very least. And then we have Wolf Rider's Saddle. This is an equipment. I think this is the last of the dinosaurs as well that I have in the deck. I know there's more, but I had to like squeeze and shuffle things around to get everything in there. And you'll see why a little later as I go through the rest of a bunch of the other cards that are in there. But this is Wolf Rider's Saddle. It's a 4-drop green artifact equipment, and when Wolf Rider's Saddle enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token, and then attach Wolf Rider's Saddle to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and can't be blocked by more than one creature. And then it has Equip 3. But the wolf token is reminiscent of the direwolf in Arc. In the winter biomes, there's direwolves all over the place, so this is to represent that in my inspired deck list here. Next, we have mechanics and items. This is sort of like gameplay mechanics as well as items that the player will use in the game that also they have, so that I included them anyway in the game so that I could replicate the entire experience of Arc and not just the dinosaurs. So first we're going to start with adventuring gear. Obviously, the water skin. This is one of the first sources of water that you're able to carry around when you make it. It's perfect representation. It has landfall whenever a land enters the battlefield. Whenever a land you control enters, I guess. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it's a 1-drop, and it has Equip 1. So it's fairly inexpensive in the mana cost region to just play it and equip it. And, it's an Explorer Essential, so like just perfect include. Had to be here. Next we have Atla Palani, Nest Tender. This is a 4-drop legendary human shaman. It's a 2/3, and it has pay 2 generic, tap, and create a 0/1 green egg creature token with Defender. Whenever an egg you control dies, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I put this one in there to represent the raising of the eggs, especially in my case, the dragon eggs or wyvern eggs. That was quite the experience, raising our first wyverns. Me and my friend group. It was a great time, you know. Ark was a great game. It has fallen since quite a bit, but I still enjoy what it used to be, you know. Yeah, and that's why this one is there. It's just very solid. It fits the theme and everything, so I just included it in there. Had to be there. Next, we have Blazing Sunsteel. So this is reminiscent of the sword, obviously in Ark. Is a bit less of a machete and more like a scimitar. This one, but sword in Ark is more like a machete. And then, so it has when equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each opponent you have. Whenever equipped creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any target. So with this one, you can, and then it has equip 4, of course. But with this one, you can double trigger enrage triggers, basically. So if you have this equipped to a creature with enrage and it gets damaged, it dealt damage, then it will trigger its own enrage effect. It will have its own enrage effect that will be triggered, and then it can also deal damage again to itself or any other creature with enrage to trigger another enrage trigger, or you can just use it to remove your creature's opponents or deal damage to your opponent or deal damage to a planeswalker, an enemy planeswalker, if you want. Just any target, so it's pretty robust and flexible. Next we have Campfire. Obviously, I needed to include Campfire. There's so many campfires being made all over in Ark. Survival Evolved especially. You just got campfires everywhere. So this one is a 1-drop artifact. You can pay 1 generic and tap it to gain 2 life. And then that's actually an underrated ability right here. This gain 2 life every time. It's just a little, little drops in the bucket, but they all add up over time. You can also have this ability here, pay 2 generic and tap it, exile Campfire, put all commanders you own from the command zone and from your graveyard into your hand, then shuffle your graveyard into your library. So this is like a one-time use, basically. Put your commanders from your command zone or the graveyard into your hand, and then shuffle your graveyard into your library. So it like recycles your cards, and you can also get your commander out of the graveyard into your hand, or out of the command zone into your hand, and could reduce the cost that way. If you have lots of commander text on your commander and you need it back, you need it quickly, then you can just use Campfire and get it back into the game quicker. We have Domri, our Anarch of Bolas. So this is sort of like a player character in Ark. It's a pretty chaotic game. Barbarians running everywhere. So this is Domri, Anarch of Bolas. It's a 3-drop planeswalker. Creatures you control get +1/+0, and it also has +1. Add a red or green creature spells you cast this turn can't be countered, and you can also -2 target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So it just helps with some removal there. Or it can also help with, if we go back here, it can also help with triggering the enrage triggers. And then we have Fiend Lash. This is like the whip from the Scorched Earth expansion. Whenever equipped creature is dealt damage, it deals damage equal to its power to target player or planeswalker. So this one, okay, it's not as good for the enrage triggers, but you can also get rid of planeswalkers or players, deal damage to players. So it's useful. And it also gives reach, so that can help with flyers. And it has equip 3, so it's a red and artifact equipment. So that's pretty cool. And then we have Forerunner of the Empire. This is another player, like person. It's a 4-drop 1/3, and when Forerunner of the Empire enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. Whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Forerunner of the Empire deal 1 damage to each creature. So this one can, if you're casting lots of Enrage, which we are, it can deal 1 damage to each creature multiple times a turn if you're casting multiple dinosaur spells. So it can you can get a lot of Enrage triggers with this guy. It's mandatory include. It's a pretty cool card. Next we have Lifecrafter's Beastry. I put this in because obviously it's not really in the game, but there is a beastry in the game that you can look at after you've unlocked the little codex thing. That's in Ark Ascended, though. In Ark Survival Evolved, I don't remember it having one, but there was, like, you would always go to the website and you'd see, like, oh, this is a creature. How do I tame it? Or, like, what does it take to tame? Looking outside the game about creatures, studying the creatures, you building your own sort of beastery there. It's a 3-drop artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay 1 green. If you do, draw a card. So it's pretty solid. It's a pretty good artifact, yeah, especially in this deck. And then we have single combat. This is just, sometimes you just got a single combat all over the place, especially when a T-Rex met a wyvern. There would be like a little musical note that would play, and they would roar at each other, or the T-Rex would roar, and there'd be it's sort of like a cinematic, not really a cinematic, but the experience was like cinematic, which is pretty cool. This is a board wipe, kind of, mostly, for creatures. So it's a 5-drop and sorcery, and each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. So this will wipe the board with pretty much everything except for the creatures that each player chooses to keep around. And yeah, it's pretty solid include. Next we have Skyclave Pickaxe. Obviously, we're using a pickaxe all the time for pretty much everything until you get some dinos, and even then you're still using pickaxes pretty much through the entire game. So it has, when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control, and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and equipped 3. It's a green enchantment, or green equipment, sorry. It's a green equipment. Alright, next we have Star Compass. This is specific to Ark Survival Evolved. They took out the compass in Ark Survival Ascended. I understand why. This is another downside of Ark Survival Evolved, is every time you would, like 90% of the time when you opened a loot box in the game, or like those loot beacons that came down on the map, every time you opened it, 90% of the time, there would be a compass blueprint. So I had to include a compass. I just had to include it, like, obviously. It was just insane, the amount of compass blueprints and compasses that were just in those boxes. And it's a mana rock, so it just helps out with the rest of the strategy. And then we have Valakut Awakening. I put it in there because of the Valakut Stoneforge card there, that land that enters tapped. The reason for that is because when you get your first forge running, like the big metal one, it feels like, yeah, now we have a forge. Now we're in business, sort of like that sort of elicit that sort of response. So this Stoneforge, Valakut Stoneforge card really spoke to me, and then this Valakut Awakening part also fits in that feeling of, now we're starting to get everything going with the metal and all that. So it is a 3-drop instant. You can put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards +1. Or you can play it as the land that enters tapped. It's a double-sided card, and it fits, in my experience of Ark, it fits pretty well. And then we have Waita, Trainer Prodigy. So obviously we're training dinosaurs. I had to include this when I saw it. It's a 3-drop 1/5 creature with haste, and target creature you control fights another target creature. This ability costs 2 less to activate if it targets two creatures you control. If a creature you control being dealt damage causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Okay, so this is like perfect for everything we're doing in this deck. It'll trigger those enrage abilities twice, and you can also use it to like fight your own creatures together so they can do damage to each other, and then it'll like trigger enrage abilities if they're one of the ones with enrage. So like had to be included. Perfect. And then we have the Landscape of Arc. This one is, yeah, this is just the lands of Arc. I tried to include as many as I could, reminiscent of, the Arc landscape, such as Battlefield Forge. This is another sort of like player interaction thing. You got like Battlefield Forges. I used to make little camps everywhere that would have like a forge somewhere. I know that I built one in the north of the island when I was training RGs. I was training RGs for our group of friends, and I'd sit out there. I built like a little Battlefield Forge, for lack of a better word, and I just sat out there taming a bunch of RGs. Argentavis, that's the full name. And then we have Blighted Woodland. This is obviously just, reminiscent of the Extinction map, kind of. And it's mana ramp. You can pay for and sacrifice it to search for 2 basic land cards, put on a battlefield tapped. It's pretty cool. It works, and it's reminiscent of the Extinction map because it's like blighted. So it fits, in my opinion. And then we have Castle Garenbrig. I put this one in because on Ragnarok there is a castle in the swamp area of the map, or just above the swamp area of the map, I suppose. And yeah, it's pretty wild to have that, having a castle as well as dinosaurs in the game. Ragnarok was my favorite map. It was like, I think it's a lot of people's favorites map because that was when everything sort of just like came together in such a way that like it was amazing. And then we have Desert, obviously, Scorched Earth expansion. There was a whole desert area, and it has Desert deals 1 damage to target attacking creature. Activate only during the end of combat step. So you can also target your own creatures with this. So it can also trigger the enrage effects on your own creatures if that's something that's viable without the creature dying, or even if it does die, it still triggers the enrage effect. So that's just a choice that you have to make within the game as you play. And then we have Desert Sandstorm. This is obviously the desert had sandstorms all the time, and it deals 1 damage to each creature. So this is like this will trigger all the enrage effects on your field, and it will deal damage to your opponent's creatures too. If some of them are just 1/1s, they just die. So that's but this is mostly in there just to trigger enrage effects. Really, that's what I put it in there for. Next, we have Dormant Volcano. In Ragnarok, there is the Dormant Volcano that sometimes wakes up. Yeah, most of the time it's dormant, so I had to put this one in there. I know that it's not the greatest card because you have to return an untapped mountain to your hand, but I had to include it because it's Dormant Volcano. Like, how could I go wrong with that? And then we have Escape to the Wilds. This one I put in there. I wasn't sure if I should put it in the landscape group of cards or the mechanics group of cards, but this is like reminiscent of for me, it was reminiscent of when we took our dinosaurs and we got them all lined up, and we were moving maps from the island to Ragnarok, and that was like a big step forward for my group of friends, me and my group of friends when we were playing. Stepping into new lands, we were escaping to new wilds, so to speak. Yeah, and it's just a really good card. You may play an additional land this turn and exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may play cards exiled this way until the end of your next turn. So this is just like, you can dig for cards that you want a little bit, have them in exile, and you can cast them from exile. This also helps with, this also can be combined with that Scorpion, Tincali Scorpion Hunter. You can also cast them from exile with for 0 if you have him out. So that we went through previously in the Dinosaurs portion. So that's pretty cool. Next we have Nea Panorama. This is just, you know, it has all of the types of lands for the deck that you need, and it's just reminiscent of the forest areas with the big mountain on the island that's in the distance. You can pretty much always see that big mountain pretty much everywhere on the island. In the middle of the island, there's that huge mountain with all the metal on it on the top. And then we have Spikefield Hazard. This is reminiscent of Aberration, because there was those earthquakes every so often. You would have an aberration, and you were always in a cave, so that kind of fits with the land. It didn't really like hurt you, like it didn't really drop spikes or anything. It did drop rocks and stuff, but it wasn't anything that would damage you. It would only damage you if you were like rock climbing at the time, and then earthquake would happen and you would fall because you couldn't use the rock climbing equipment while an earthquake was happening. It's reminiscent enough that I put it in there, and also it is a 1-cost instant. You can deal 1 damage to any target. If a permanent is dealt damage this way, would die this turn, exile it instead. So that's pretty solid, and then you could also just play it as a land if needed. Next we have Star of Extinction. This is kind of like a board wipe, and it also is reminiscent of when the volcano explodes and starts sending, well, rocks flying everywhere, giant rocks, and the lava is going everywhere. So this is like, it is a 7-cost sorcery, destroy target land, search Star of Extinction, deals 20 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. Next we have the Great Henge. This for me is the process of transferring maps again, just what I imagine it like. You're like going through a portal. Also, like especially when in Aberration, you're like on the other side of a portal, so you like went through a portal to get there, and this is like going through the portal. That's why the Great Henge is in there. It's also like a great card to have, so why wouldn't I put it in there? And it does match the aesthetic enough that I just included it. And then we have Tower of Fortunes. This isn't the greatest card, but it does remind me of the obelisks, obviously, in Arc. It has a giant light beam shooting off into the sky. It's a huge tower. And I mean, it's just a 4-drop artifact. And you can pay 8 to tap it to draw 4 cards. So it's just card draw. It's just very expensive mana card draw. But it does remind me of the beacons enough that I'm like, yes, this needs to be in there. And then here at the end, I just have a story about this pyramid of the Pantheon. The reason I included this one is because in my own personal journey, I wanted to tame a Chalicotherium. Pretty sure that's what they're called. You had to tame them with alcohol. It was a passive tame at the time. It still is a passive tame. And you have to tame them with alcohol. And the way you would make alcohol is in like brewing barrels. And when I built a pyramid at the time on like the side of the map in the island, and I built it into like a brewery, but it was in a pyramid like shape. Like that, it was structurally a pyramid, but I had a huge brewery there, and I spent a lot of time making the alcohol so that I could tame those Chalicotheriums and, you know, get them tamed up and use them. And it was pretty cool. It was my favorite dinosaur for a while. And then I just had them like sit outside the pyramid, and it was a great time. Yeah, and that's why that one's in there. If someone else wanted to make this deck, they could take a lot of these cards out and put their own versions. You know, just share your deck list if you make a deck that's inspired by Arc, and make a little like paragraph or page or two of your experience with Ark and what you what you liked about the game, or like an experience you had, and like I don't know, make a story about why you included cards in your deck. I'd like to read other people's experience with the game because I really liked Ark, and I don't like the direction they've gone in, but it's still a good game despite all of that. And that's the end. I'll see you in the next video. I don't know what I'll do, but I am starting to stream. I have done a few streams of Ark. No one watches, but that's okay. I don't mind too much. I did have one viewer the other day, which was pretty cool. It wasn't very long, but that's okay. Yeah. Subscribe if you want more. I have more videos coming. This has been pretty fun. I did want to go through this deck for a while. This it's not made to win. It's just a storytelling device for me. This deck. I do play with it sometimes though. I do have it built, and I play with it. It doesn't win very often because it's kind of jank. It does have a lot of jank in there, but it's you got to take the bad with the good, sort of. Uh, it's just the experience. Well, I think that's it for me. See you guys in the next video.